In this lesson, we're going to break down the interface of the UDK editor. Alright, so the best way to learn any new interface is to break it down into larger sections. So to start out, we're going to start out here at the top in our menu bar. Now the menu bar is pretty straightforward across any type of software. It just contains common tools and commands for working with UDK. So for example, if we go to File, we have New Level, Open, Save Level, we can import and export and things like that. A lot of these different commands that are available here are also available to be quickly accessed through what's called the toolbar. Okay, right here across the top here. Now the toolbar provides quick access to commonly used tools and commands. So you can see here that our toolbar is broken up into different sections. You can see that signified by these little lines in between some of these different tools here. So this first section that we have is our Maps section, and this allows us to create a new level, open an existing level, favorite a level, as you can see here, and then we could even save our levels. We have undo and redo, which is pretty self-explanatory. And then we have our translation or transform tools here, which allows us to select, move, rotate, scale, or uniform scale, and then we have non-uniform scale. Okay. We have our reference coordinate system, which allows us to move our objects in a world axis or a local axis, and this is going to be very helpful whenever we start set dressing our levels. We have find actors. Now actors are objects that we have placed in our level, and we can find them by name by simply using find actors. We have our content browser, which allows us to access any content that we have in our packages, and we can place those in our scene. Now you've probably seen this before because it comes up by default, and you'll notice that in the content browser you have several different tabs that you can go to find all of these different bits of content. Okay, now we'll talk about that as we move along. We're going to go ahead and just close that for now. Now the next section that we have is Kismet and Matinee. Now these are editors on their own, and they are very robust, and we're going to be talking about them a little bit in this course, but we're not going to get too in-depth with those because they can be very complicated, and that would make this course very, very long. And this course is going to be pretty hefty just with the basics that we want to cover here. So we'll be talking about those a little bit later on, but we're just going to get a basic look at those. Now moving on, we have our translucent selection, and we have this marquee selection window crossing toggle here. Now to select an object using the marquee tool in our perspective view, we need to hold down Control and Alt and then left mouse button, and that will allow us to use this marquee selection. And this allows us to select multiple objects. Now, right now, by default, it's set to crossing. So what that means is anytime that marquee selection is touching an object, it will select that. Now, if I want to only select this cube and not select my skybox and my floor, I'll simply toggle on window, and that means that I have to completely encompass the object before it will select it. So you can see here that only this cube is now selected. Alright, now I'm going to switch that back to our default crossing there. So to do a marquee selection, you hold down Control, Alt, and then left mouse button. Go ahead and practice that a few times so you get the idea of how to do that, because that's going to be very helpful later on. Alright, so moving on, we can go to our build section here, and this allows us to build geometry, we can build our lighting, we could build everything in our level, and this also allows us to affect the quality of our build. So for example, we have this light quality setting. By default, it's set to what's called preview mode, and it's going to be a very kind of a low rating on the lighting. So if we want something like production quality, we can right click on that and you'll see that we get production. Okay. Moving on, we have our emulator, which allows us to emulate mobile features. So if we're creating a level that's going to be going onto the mobile platform, we have these tools available to us. Now we also have these mobile options here that are available, and we can upload to our mobile and install that, and then we have things like playing on our PC, which will actually load in the Unreal game itself that we've created, and we can play it on our PC. Moving on, we can debug using Kismet, and then we have what's called Play in Editor. And this will actually bring up a new window, allowing you to play your level in a different editor here, okay, or a different window. Now you'll also see that we have something similar right here, but this is playing in the viewport. Both are very similar, and you'll be able to get the same type of look. So one isn't really better than the other. Okay, so we talked about the toolbar there. Let's put it into a practice here. So let's learn how to open a map. Let's simply go up to Open an Existing File, and you'll see that it brings you to your installed folder that you used here, and we have UDK Game Content Maps. Now inside of Maps, if we click on that, you'll see that we have 4 different folders. We have Examples, Mobile, Showcases, and then UT3. We're going to go ahead and go to Examples here, and we're going to use the example map because it's pretty small, and we're going to hit Open. Okay, now this is going to say, do you want to save any of your packages? I didn't actually create any packages. This is just a default one that comes up whenever you open the editor. I'm going to hit Don't Save because I don't want to save anything there. And you'll see here that we have a map that has now been opened. So what I can do now is I can just kind of float down here toward the floor a little bit closer and play in the view, or in the viewport here itself. And this allows me to move around using W, A, S, and D to move in my viewport. And then if you can simply move the mouse around to look. Now if you want to fire, hold down left mouse button. And then if you want to do an alternate fire, you can hold down the right mouse button. Okay, you can switch weapons by using the scroll wheel. That will allow you to do that. And seeing how I only have one weapon, it's only going to switch between no weapon and this weapon. Now this map is very neat because it has just some basic work that's been done in this level. So we can create an elevator, we have triggers and things like that going on, and we can move throughout this level, and you can play this however you see fit. So we're going to be using this type of workflow here to create a level, and we're going to get into some of these different systems to create objects like this. Okay, now once you're done playing in the map, you can simply hit Escape, or what you can do is you can hit the tilde key, which is the key directly below the Escape key, and this brings up your command panel, and this will actually allow you to type in exit, okay, and that exits the game. Okay, now I'm sorry, I called that the command panel. It's actually called the console. Okay, sorry about that. So we have a map that is open, and we're working inside the viewport, which is our next major section here. And in the viewport, we can navigate by holding down W, A, S, and D to move around. If we hold down our right mouse button, this allows us to look, okay, around in place. If I hold down the left mouse button, this will actually allow me to dolly the camera forward, backward, and then it will allow me to rotate the camera left and right. Okay. Now if I want to pan in my view, I can simply hold down the left mouse button and the right mouse button, and this will allow me to pan up, down, and then left and right. Okay. Alright, so that's how we can navigate in the viewport. You can select objects in the viewport by simply left-clicking on them. If you want to select multiple, you hold down Control and left-click. And remember, if you want to select multiple using marquee, you can simply hold down Control, Alt, and left mouse button, and anything that touches that window is now selected. Now, that's even if it's behind other objects, so you want to be careful with that, so that crossing or that window selection becomes very helpful. Okay, so anything that is inside of that selection will only be selected here. Okay. All right, so we've talked about how to work in the viewport, and another thing that I want to talk about in the viewport is how we can actually change our views. Right now we're working in the lit perspective view here, and to change the actual view, you can left click right here on the viewport type, and this will switch you to the top view represented by T. Left click on it again, it will take you to the front view, the side view, and then back to perspective. Now let's say that I want to go into what's called a quad view, where I have the top, front, left, and perspective all in my viewport here. Well, I can actually click on this restore, and you'll see that we have the side view, the front view, top view, and our perspective, and we can work in either one of those. Now, you'll notice that these viewports are a little bit different than one another. So right here in our perspective view, we can actually see all of our lighting, we can see all of our textures and things like that. And that's because we're working in a different render mode than side, front, and top. Right now in the perspective, we're working in what's called the lit view. Okay, now we can switch this to these different rendering modes and get a different effect here. Okay, so usually perspective stays in lit, unless we're debugging things like lighting, where we'll go to a detailed lighting view. And then we can do lighting only and things like that. But normally it's lit. Now the other ones, okay, so in our side view, we're in this brush wireframe, which is really great because it allows us to select the different brushes individually. Okay, and we can move those around as needed. Now, as we zoom out using our mouse wheel, okay, and then if I hold down my left mouse button, this allows me to pan in my view, okay, but it doesn't allow me to actually orbit in the view. And notice it's doing this on all of the different objects, okay, or different viewports. So if I zoom out, it zooms out in all of them. This just makes it easier to see what exactly is going on here. Okay, so we've got a neat little level here that we can work with and play in, and you can get acquainted with the controls by playing around in the level and just kind of working in the editor itself. Now before we end this lesson, we have one last section in our view. Let me go ahead and maximize my perspective view because I like to just work here. It just gives me a lot of room. One last section is going to be the status bar here along the bottom. And the status bar is going to give us lots of information about our level and as we're editing this level. So right down here along the bottom, we have some information about our packages, about our paths, and our lighting. And these are really great because they tell us if our packages are up to date, if our lighting is up to date, and things like that. If they're not, they'll have a different icon on them, and all we'll have to do is just simply build all, and it will take care of any errors that throws out to us. It tells us what level we're on and what kind of level it is. Okay, and we have some information about objects that we have selected and where they are located in space. Okay, and then we could even translate those objects by grabbing our move tool, and let's select this guy right here. We could actually move this in an X, Y, or Z position. Okay, and then we have snapping. Now snapping is going to be extremely important whenever we start set dressing because we want them to snap along the grid at first just to get a good placement, and usually this is done by the power of 2. So if we click on this, you'll see that we have all of these different settings, and notice how they're all in the power of 2. So 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and so on. Okay. So as we progress through this, you'll also notice that we have an angle snapping. So it gives us an angle that we can snap to, and again, you'll see that we have a couple of different degree types here, and this is going to be very helpful for working inside of our set dressing here. We also have percent snapping, so if we scale something, it's going to scale at a certain percentage. This also tells us that our autosave is enabled. If we want to turn that off, we can do so, but I recommend having that on so that way you don't lose very much progress. Now you can change those options here by telling it what it can save and then also at what interval it can save. Now I know you can't see that off the screen, but you can try that on your own in your editor. Okay, so that is a quick rundown and breakdown of the interface and how to navigate in the viewports. Go ahead and take some time to practice moving around in the viewport. You might just practice in this level here, get to know the UDK editor, what it has available to you, and start getting some ideas of what you want to create for your level if you don't want to follow along exactly of what I'm creating. All right, so now that we've done that, let's move on into our next lesson. And in that lesson, we're going to start talking about how to block in a level using BSP. Okay, so I'll see you then.